Ubisoft finally making good decisions. I think that this is definitely a glitch in the Matrix, but if you haven't been paying any attention, we have some pretty decent news on Assassin's Creed. Of course, Syndicate is getting a 60 FPS upgrade on the new gen consoles, and of course, we also have a big update that will follow soon for Star Wars Outlaws. There's also been some data mines slash leaks in regards to some of the Animus Hub monetizations, and especially so in regards to Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out next year. It seems that the developers have given their answers in the past few days. I do want to start things off with the Assassin's Creed Syndicate update. This is actually quite exciting because it's been like, what, almost 10 years since the game came out. I think that this came out in 2015. But Assassin's Creed Syndicate plays now at 60 FPS on Xbox Series X and S, PS5 and PS5 Pro. If you haven't seen, this is actually an official announcement made out by Ubisoft. And it seems that they will be putting out a completely free 60 FPS patch on all of these consoles right here for AC Syndicate. But the patch notes pretty much read that there's going to be a 31.8 gigs patch on the Xbox, which pretty much gives you 4K resolution at 60 FPS. And for Series S, there's going to be 1080p resolution at 60 FPS. I'm not really sure because I haven't played it on those consoles. And the same goes on the PlayStation. A 0.75 gigabyte update that's going to be available both for the PS5 and the PS5 Pro. 1080p at 60, 4K at 60. So that sounds really exciting. If you really were to analyze it, AC Syndicate was quite iconic for the Assassin's Creed franchise. It introduced many of the features that kind of became the norm in many of the new era Assassin's Creed games. Like, for example, having two protagonists at the same time. We had the twins, we had Jacob and Evie, and both of them played vastly different compared to one another. They had their own personalities, which is something that it seems we're going to see in Assassin's Creed Shadows as well. But this was the first game to actually do it on that scale. Also, I really enjoyed the Victorian era London, so just for that reason, to revisit some of those places, it's definitely worth it. Even though maybe the parkour was not the best, but that was mostly because of the layout of the city, and especially like streets being super wide and you kind of feeling constrained if you were sitting in the middle of the road. But they did add other functionalities like the rope launcher. This was the first time we saw it, and probably the last. I don't think there was other Assassin's Creed games with the rope launcher, but it did make some of that traversal easier because of the wider structure of the city. Now, on a similar note, Star Wars Outlaws is back into the news. Does anybody here remember Star Wars Outlaws? As quick as it came out, as quick as it just went out the window. But Ubisoft is not completely given up hope just yet. There's a big dev blog post and a big update, I believe title update, 1.4, which is going to release on November 21st. A few more days until then, and it's absolutely free. But according to Games Radar, this next big update is starting to sound a whole lot like a new open world game, which sounds really intriguing. I think that Ubisoft actually pushing through and still listening to the feedback despite the very negative reception of the game is pretty good on them, honestly. I think that the best situation they could be in is to just salvage and make the game as good as possible. And some of the changes I'm seeing here, we're going to check the dev post in just a little bit, but some of these changes are actually something that the fans have requested for the longest time. So headshots being more rewarding, health and armor stats revamped to make various enemy types more distinct. Also, enemies now have weak points in 1.4. They've also added enemies to now have defeat animations and hit reactions. Something that was really lacking from the game. You could just go in, slap a few enemies in the face like stormtroopers. You could wipe out entire groups of enemies with just slapping them in the face, which is hilarious. But also, every weapon now has recoil, fire rate, ammo, and accuracy stats tweaked. Some of the weapons also had their shooting patterns completely redesigned, and there's additional ones like the power module letting you now shoot through walls, which is actually a really good one. Iron module now stuns enemies for much longer, plus you no longer drop scavenge weapons while climbing, and you can now choose which shoulder the camera favors. So all of these are pretty good changes. Probably the biggest in my opinion is this: you no longer drop scavenge weapons while climbing. And reading some of these patch notes right here, they pretty much also mentioned that in terms of weapons that K finds in the field, we made sure that you get to hold onto them for longer, even when climbing and traversing the environment or interacting with enemies in the world. This change that was highly requested means you can now make a longer term strategic choices, get more rewarded for turning enemy weapons against them, and have more varied combat encounters. So it's not like completely 100% what I really wanted. I really wanted for us to like constantly keep the weapons that we got. I think that that's sorely needed for the game. It still baffles me that their whole decision for Star Wars Outlaws was to basically make it so that you only have the blaster and that was it. Meanwhile, all of these weapons, all of these enemies, have all of these insane weapons. They pretty much blast at you with like the strongest options, and you only get to like get them from the ground and shoot like once or twice, and then you're pretty much done with it. But I guess this is a pretty good change in that direction, that you can hold for them. You can hold on them for a bit longer. Even when you climb, interact with the environment, or take down enemies, which is good because K was kind of dropping them in these moments for some reason. So hopefully this is going to pave the way for a full weapon like keeping option in the future, because I think that's something that would be a natural progression that this game really needs. But besides that, Star Wars Outlaws Dev Update number 2, aiming down the sights, that's what it's called, 1.4. Coming out on November 21st, we are bringing big updates to enemy AI and your freedom of approach, allowing you to go silent or loud in all scenarios. More on that later in a future update. Along with these improvements, we also revamped the feel and utility of weapons and core combat. So there's not going to be just one update that fixes this. They will be following soon with another one after title update 1.4. But like I said, one of the first things they will be changing is in terms of the stats for all weapons and enemies, making headshots more rewarding and tuning armor and health for all enemy types to differentiate archetypes and make them more distinct. We've also added weak points to enemies, which allows you to take down through opponents with a well-placed precision shot at the right moment. To bring it all together, new defeat animations and hit reactions have also been added to make sure hitting enemies is as rewarding and gratifying as it can be. So there you have it. Second of all, we took a step back to review what we would call weapon feel to really upgrade gameplay mechanics. Aspects like recoil, fire rate, ammo, and accuracy for every weapon, and we updated feedback in terms of audio, VFX, and UI. So the goal was to create weapons and blaster modules that were distinct enough and rewarding to master, which I think it's a solid choice over there. Some of the weapons in the game definitely felt like they had absolutely no weight to them, if that makes any sense. In the sense that you could just like aim it and it would like shoot in a straight pattern and you would just take enemies down. It didn't matter if you just got another blaster, if you got like a rifle, if you got something else. It just felt like the combat was not feeling great. That's what I'm trying to say. Besides that, I think that the K blaster, I think that her blaster also gets a bunch of upgrades. Like we saw the shoot through cover one. So we added the ability for the power module to hit cover and knock out enemies that were hiding behind it. So this specifically mentions the cover. I don't think this is going to work behind walls. We also updated the iron module to stun enemies for longer and make them vulnerable to damage while they are stunned, which is a pretty good choice. The stun was one of the best options in the game at the very least. Our intention is to give you more freedom and to make using the different modules during combat even more fun. Like typically you would use the stun module, especially on enemies with shields, to take those down, but even against enemies like humanoids, it would still work at stunning them, albeit that stun did not feel too long. So buffing the duration is also a pretty good one. They also have a bunch of other things over here listed. So lastly, we've taken a new approach to how cover works. So the camera will no longer try and predict which shoulder it should be on. It will now be more comfortable and stable around corner. To facilitate this, we've added the ability to shoulder swap when aiming, giving you greater control and precision. Add to that a host of improvements to the animations around and reliability of using cover, and we hope this will let you focus on tactics and actions rather than thinking about the cover mechanics. All in all, solid choices. I think that they could definitely improve a bunch of other stuff as well. One of the things that I really want to see improved in the future is going to be the open world. So the thing about the open world in Star Wars Outlaws is that it feels very bland, very not open. It is open, but in a sense, it feels like you're just not seeing anything in it. You have some enemies over there that don't really do much. You can get in trouble with the cops, with the Empire basically, but it's just a chase scene and it kind of just screws over your gameplay. Or if you go to missions, I'm not sure if that was ever fixed. And it overall felt like there was no need for you to do the open world besides maybe just checking the environment, or maybe jumping in a race, or maybe finding some random activity, a lot of which were pretty much quite uninspired in terms of how they were designed, but I guess it is what it is. In the future, I really want them to add more variety to what happens to the open world and really give you a reason to go out there and explore and stay there for longer. But yeah, that is pretty much it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.